Well, everyone, it's time to talk about a certain special weapon. This is the Ultra Stamp, and recently it's been the subject of discussion. Now, a few months ago, Ultra Stamp got a pretty significant buff, increasing the outside hitbox of the throw mode for both the 220 hit and the 60 damage hitbox, giving us this lovely thing. So, this has been around for some time now, but I think it's finally starting to catch on that this has turned Stamp into one of the best specials in the game. Personally, I would have it at about my 6th slot, and I've seen other people talk about that it might need a nerf, or be too good, or be brain dead, or whatever the sort. And I think that that might seem like a very large increase in placement for a special that for the most part was seen as like the middle of the pack at best until this buff. So is this really that drastic of a buff? Is this really something that needs to be nerfed? Well, there's a few things I want to get out of the way first. The first thing is that I think the main candidate that has been causing Stamp to get a little too out of hand is mini splatling. Now, mini splatling isn't even the weapon I think has the best synergy with Ultra Stamp. And in fact, this is going to be a very similar story to a different mini splatling. I think this is getting a lot of the spotlight because it can simply farm stamps very quickly. Throne Stamp is a very fast to use special, and as you can see, it takes practically no effort to get another one. If you think of Stamp's Throne mode as a better but single-use pre-patch Zuka, which is pretty accurate if I'm being honest, then it's pretty easy to see how this could be spammable in the same way as something like Zuka or Neo Splash's Tri-Strike. Mini Splatling is also 190p for Ultra Stamp. It can't run as much charge up as something like a Neo Splash, but it gets quite a lot of these. I think when fighting a vanilla mini splatling in particular and dealing with like 10 hammers being thrown out a game, it tends to make the special look a lot better than it might actually be, and in particular will definitely be more annoying. Personally, when I look at Stamp on weapons like Wiper or Wellstring that do tend to synergize in some places with it, while the new Stamp does seem powerful, I don't think it seems overtuned, and I'll get into that in a minute. But on this weapon, I think it's a bit of a problem. The stamp ability and spam ability just turned into one word there. The spam ability of Ultra Stamp on this weapon is absolutely too high. This should be a candidate for 200 and maybe even 210p down the line, 100%. If there's any Stamp nerf I'm going to agree with, it's going to be that. Now, I'm not opposed to also nerfing down the radius of the 220 hitbox. I don't mind the 60 hitbox being large because it requires some coordination, and it is just a single throw special, so even if it's a little silly, I don't think it's inherently a problem, and some part of Stamp being more consistent makes sense. It also matches design-wise with the Rush mode, where it more consistently can deal small amounts of damage with its shockwaves. So if they really want to keep that part of the Stamp cohesive, then, like, yeah, that's great. But, like, does that need to one-shot? Probably not. Like, that one-shot both of them. You know. So if they do end up toning it back, like the 220 hitbox, then sure, I'm not going to complain about it. Do I think it needs to be toned back? Not really. Let's talk about the other part of Stamp that hasn't been changed. Let's talk about the Rush mode, right? Because this is where a lot of people tend to poke at Ultra Stamp as kind of a flawed special. But I think when Rush mode is seen as a part of your special and not all of it, it tends to get a little bit more merit. Ultra Stamp is pretty good if you're able to use it in cover, or against specific weapons that have a harder time shooting through it, just to kind of stall a position or threaten things. When the special was over prior, though, the throw wasn't threatening, so Stamp could only do this, and that value on its own wasn't good enough. So it forced Stamp users into situations where they would have to rush towards the opponents. And that's where the flaws of Rush mode, because it's not made to be able to easily rush down opponents in the open, really start to show themselves. Now, though, an Ultra Stamp user can very easily use it to have a small amount of cover or fight off a weapon it favors more easily, and then as soon as it's done, it gets this amazing throw mode option that could also get value. And when you get to weapons like Mini or Wellstring that might not want to risk their weapon at times, they could also just simply opt to only throw the special. And while its value as just being thrown is a little more inconsistent, you're also going to get back your main weapon incredibly quickly. So it doubles as a very quick ink tank refill that you can just chuck into a team fight and probably find some meaningful damage into. That said, I think that just throwing the stamp on weapons that aren't the vanilla mini splatling is a little bit harder and not exactly good enough. I don't think you can get away with that on something like Wiper, and that's where I kind of don't have as much of an issue with it. A weapon like Wiper is forced to use the rush mode a lot more, and that's the mode where the counterplay tends to be a lot more balanced. Even if the throw mode is a little stupid, I think that after experiencing this buff a bit, it is also at least somewhat clear that this special did need a buff in this area. That making the special more flexible was a good idea for it. I have long advocated for just making rush mode better, and while I'm still not opposed to that initial idea before, I do think that there is a little bit more interesting depth to the idea of making the special more balanced between the two modes it has. Instead of directly buffing the rush mode, it's just offsetting its weaknesses by giving you another option for the special. And I generally like when specials have more depth and ways to use it. It's what I really like about Crab. That being said, is Stamp still a little bit stupid with some of its outside hitboxes, like this one and this one? Yeah. Yeah, it's a little stupid. There's probably a better middle ground than what we have now. But do I think it's brain dead or broken or anything? Nah, just tone down the 60 hitbox a bit if you want to, and stop making mini Splatlings 190p. I think we've done this with, like, every mini Splatling. I think is Zimmy not... I think we fixed it on mini, right? Yeah, Zimmy. This gun should be 200p minimum. We gotta stop making painting weapons anything less than 200p, unless we're intentionally giving them some, like, terrible special or something. And I'm not really fond of that way of balancing the game. That said, I could be wrong about Stamp. And I do want to present one counter-argument that Stamp might be way more broken than I thought, which is, you could make the argument that Stamp isn't on one of the best main weapons it could be on. Mini Splatling is more of a support option. While it spams a lot of them, it doesn't have that synergy. And synergistic weapons like Wiper might not be as strong as they could be. If we saw something like a Mint with an Ultra Stamp or an S-Blast, maybe it would be even stronger, or maybe even some fighting weapon like a dually with it that could also get stamps at least somewhat similar in amount to Mini, even if it would still lag behind. So there is a possibility that maybe, yeah, this special is actually even better than I think it is, and it's just that the candidates it's on aren't exceptionally strong. But I don't know. Vanilla Mini Splitting's pretty good. Wiper synergy with it is pretty good, so I don't know if that's the case. Anyway, my thoughts on Stamp overall are that it's fine. You know, I think it's a little overtuned in places. I think the spammability on Mini is a little dumb at times. But as a whole, I think there are much larger problems to fry in the special department. So until we're ready to fix things like Booyah and Strike, I could care a little bit less about Stamp. So, yeah, that's my thoughts. Thanks for watching.